Take a bunch of questions, a pinch of controversy, and 2 cups of opinion. Stir thoroughly and let it set. Smells good, doesn't it? Welcome to the Craig Lord Podcast.
This time it's good evening. I had to move. Look, I had to move from outside. I decided earlier in the week that I would do this podcast from outside. I thought, I'll go outside, I'll sit on the deck, I'll relax in a really nice casual atmosphere to have a casual chat with you and talk about a few things that have been on my mind all week long. And then it started pouring with rain. And I couldn't even hear myself speak. So I've had to rush inside and sit in chair corner for this podcast tonight. It's a very warm welcome to you. Thank you for watching and joining me tonight. Now, all week I've had these things in my head about our finances in Auckland Council and our rates, because I've been talking to some people on the inside and trying to get an understanding of where we are at with our savings, our expenditure, our wasteful spending, the cost savings that have been done in that big bulk one that they spoke about, the $120 million. And that one is actually important. Well, in fact, we'll kick off with that. Remember, it would have been about 5 months ago, give or take, the council spoke about, might even be a bit further back, they spoke about how we were going to struggle to make ends meet. And they were going to look at ways to try and cut back a lot of the expenditure out of council. They wanted to make a saving of $120 million. What I understand is they're now at $90 million. That's not bad. That's okay. And you got to congratulate them for trying to find that saving, because $90 million is quite a lot. It's only a tenth of the yearly staff wage. We'll get into that later. Regardless, those are wonderful savings, and here's hoping they can find more. What concerns me, and I suspect it concerns you as well, is the small stuff. They're not looking after the pennies. Remember the old saying we were taught, you look after the pennies and the pounds take care of themselves? I don't think that's happening. That example of Auckland Transport's stupid spending at Great Barrier Island, $32,000, that little wee one down at Pukekohe that I saw this week, where they painted a defunct bus stop. They repainted the road signs. A contractor has been paid to do that. Now, if you add all of those little expenditures up every day, probably every hour of every day of every week of the year, can you imagine the amount of money that's being spent? I brought it up in 2019, actually, and a few people caught on to it, but the majority hadn't. I think it's slowly starting to sink in. Things like road cones. They're not there for free. There's no contracting company that will provide you that for free. You pay for everything. There will be a fee to have a road cone out. It might be per job or it might be per, but there's a fee. And how long do they sit there? Now, if you were the contracting company supplying those, you'd want them to stay out for as long as possible, wouldn't you? Guess I've just ticked off those people, so I won't be getting any votes from those contractors. But you get what I'm saying here. It's all about looking after the pennies. If we can get to the core of where we are wasting money in Auckland Council, we can save your money. And that is the big point that's been going through my head all week. Your money. Every single penny is your rates. Your rates are going into this big kitty. Your fuel tax, which is, let's just say I want to abolish a fuel tax and I don't have the power to do it, but I'll do everything to fight to get it to be done regardless. But every little bit of your money is being spent, and only some of it is being spent wisely. There have been examples over the last 3 years, and to be fair, I haven't stopped campaigning since 2019, and I've dragged up a lot of dirt across the last couple of years that, for you long-time followers of this page, you will be aware of a lot of the stuff that's been found. These projects are showing a system that's inept maybe some of the staff doing it, but maybe they're just in the system and they just go through the motions. Take, for example, if you were to get a tender out, you put out a tender, let's say for a footpath to be repaired or a new footpath to be put into a park. Remember that one a couple of years ago I dug up from over the shore when it tried to keep it under wraps? And it was the one where millions of dollars was spent on that little wee footpath, concrete footpath in the park over the shore. Now that must have gone out for tender. Now, there'll be plenty of you out there, plenty of you DIYers and some of you contractors who would go, yeah, well, it's just a concrete path, okay, bit of foundation, bit of footing. We all know the routine of building this thing. Millions of dollars for a very, very short concrete path. Someone's taking the piss, aren't they? That is the sort of stuff that has to be found. Now, quite possibly, the people who sign that off might not know any better. We don't know until we go in and ask the question. They might be completely useless at what they do, or they might just go, well, if that's the price we're being told that it's going to cost, I'll sign it off because I've been given authorization to sign it off. Why isn't it being questioned? If it was you doing that with somebody in your own property, you would question it. You'd ask, you'd say, well, hang on, that doesn't feel right, that price. I'm going to get another quote. I might get 2 quotes. And you'll find, okay, that's the going rate. However, I suspect, as probably you do as well, that as soon as you mention it's a council tender, now, granted, there's going to be times when there will be contracts and tenders that cut right to it, just scrape through, and the company that's doing it is barely making a buck. There's going to be those. But we know the story on the others, don't we? We all know. And you'd have to be pretty blind to think that it's not getting creamed. You like when you say, oh, it's for a wedding, price goes up. No, it's a council job, price goes up. That sort of stuff needs to be analysed properly, right down in the nitty gritty. I love doing that. I love it. My wife hates it when I'm planning to buy things for around the house because I will shop and I will shop around and I could spend weeks researching a stupid little. If she said to me, let's go buy an air fryer, I'm telling you, I'm not going down the shop and buying an air fryer. I will internet search for 2 weeks and I will work out the differences between each of these air fryers and I will work out the return on my investment for that air fryer before I go and get it. And then I'll actually decide if it's a worthy investment and I'll compare it to, well, hang on, if I just use the microwave for that, do I really need it? Or I could use the oven for that. Do I really need it? You get what I'm saying? I don't think that happens in council. And actually, I know it doesn't because I've been told from people in there. It's not happening. Now, this means it's your money going to silly things. And we all want to stop that. But until someone, I'm willing to do it, puts up their hand like I did back in 2019, says, look, I'm willing to go in there and sit down in each department over the period of time, the tenure of a mayor, and do that job bit by bit by bit by bit. And let's dig into it. Let's find out. I've been through this before. And again, some of you long-time followers, and I've used the analogy of a machine or a car. You can't just take your car to a mechanic and say, there's a knock under the engine. Can you solve it? Under the bonnet, solve it for me. Mechanic needs to look at it. Needs to analyze where it's coming from, top, bottom, middle. There's a lot of things that it could be, which means there are a lot of answers to solving the problem. Different solutions, different tools required. That has to be done diligently, and I'm willing to do it for you if you want me to. And this week, again, I was pondering how it seems unfair. We're not getting a return on our investment. Our rates are going up. We all know it. And at the end of this month, there's going to be the Have Your Say consultation for the latest budget, which includes the climate tax, which I hate with a vengeance. And if I'm mayor, I will say no to that. So I'm hoping that doesn't go through because then I can make sure it never goes through under my tenure. The climate tax is a rort and I disagree with it so much. But okay, that's coming out at the end of this February, this new budget. But that's not enough. You've got to have people in the departments, going through and finding out why things are costing so much. Why are silly decisions being made with your money? And people wouldn't do it if it was their own purse. People would not be spending on silly things if it had to come out of their own bank account. If every person that signed off on an expenditure had to do it from their own commission, come on, we know it wouldn't happen. So we've got to make sure that we're getting a good return on investment on your rates, which is why I've been harping on for, well, it's basically 4 years now, about core services. How I believe Auckland Council should be all about core services, because I don't think we're getting a good return on our investment. There's some really good local board members. There's some really good councillors. And then there's the ones who are the puppets, who just want to take your rates and spend it large, because it's not their money. It's your money. Why do they care? We need to change that. We need to change that mentality. Now, I need to get this right in my head. You see, this is going to require teamwork. We know in council there's always going to be AB, 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 the teams across the council table. We know that in the bureaucratic side, the staffing side, the management side of Auckland Council, outside of the purview of the councillors and the mayor, that things happen and signed off. And we're going to have to go in there and find out, and you're going to get stonewalled, because you wouldn't want me walking into your site, into your job, and telling you how to do it. So I don't intend to do that. I believe this should be all about teamwork, and it's going to require leadership, not dictatorship. You cannot go in there swinging the big sword, acting like the tough one who's going to come in and make massive changes. That is not what's going to happen, and we all know that in reality. I'm just as angry as you are, and I've made some decent rants over the last 4 years on this page and other social media outlets in my annoyance and how pissed off I am about how things are getting done. But it doesn't mean I'm just going to get voted in and then go in there with the big stick, wave it around and expect change. You can't do that. I mean, let's be realistic here. So we've got to do this in the proper mode, because the last thing we need is to be stonewalled by every single department in council. Otherwise, come October, you vote me in and I'm getting absolutely nowhere, because the approach is wrong. We have to convince every single person in council, in the operations, that they need to do better due diligence for you. And I'm sure a lot of them do. Well, there's so many of them. What is it? 11,000 or something? I think it's something like that. My phone's ringing. I hope it's not to say that the live stream isn't working. I can't answer it. I'll just sorry, can't chat in a meeting. Yeah, that one will work. I'm sure I would have got a whole lot of messages by now if the audio wasn't working or the video wasn't showing. But look, we've got to get into the departments and the divisions of Auckland Council, but we've got to do it properly. So again, we need to do this in a leadership manner. We've got to try and remove this A and B team thing. And I'm sure at times there's probably even a C team. We've got to get rid of this minion style of politics. We know it exists now. We know there's golf. We know it's Labour. City Vision, Labour. The handful, or probably the majority of councillors, if I try and count them roughly off my head, I can't count to 20 that fast and work out who's who, but you've got that little inner circle, right, which is the voting power, and then you've got to sway a few. But that's got to stop, and that requires a better leadership plan, and going in there and making people understand what their purpose is for, even right down to the staff. And there's going to be a lot of people who work in Auckland Council who are absolutely fantastic and do believe in what they do. But you know as well as I do, there's a lot in there that'll be like, I don't care, I just turn up, I'm paid by council. Doesn't matter. And I'm paid a lot of money. We've got to find that. And that's going to ruffle some feathers. That part of the leadership management side, nobody likes doing, but it has to happen. And those are the parts of things that have to be found out. But you do that as a team. You work it all out. But hey, here's the deal. The mayor just can't go in and start firing people. Let's be realistic here. The mayor doesn't have that power. You imagine all the legal ramifications if you tried to fire half of Auckland staff. You've got to go through the processes. But again, I'm willing to do that if you want me to. Let's get back to the money. So yes, I've been extremely angry about the way our money has been wasted and spent, and I've brought up so many different samples of that over the last few years, and it just keeps going because no one in there is focusing on these small ticket items that add up to massive ticket items, especially when they get overpriced and go over budget. Everything's about the big ticket items. In fact, I remember seeing a press release out of Our Auckland last year talking about how they'd saved so much on the insurance plan. Cool. The yearly insurance has dropped by a massive amount. That's nice. That's great. Good work. Rah to whichever staff member went out and got the tenders and negotiated for a better insurance plan for Auckland. That's cool. But again, the small ticket items are getting ignored. Now, what does that mean after all this rambling? What that means is there's not enough money to do the little jobs right, and the little jobs aren't getting sorted out right because it's exactly the same process as not caring about the spends. The reason you've got potholes everywhere, the reason we've got manhole covers sticking up out of the road, the reason we've got footpaths falling apart, why we've got cobblestone areas, why we've got shambles of front gardens, our parks are in disarray, so many problems, is because it's not being managed properly. Now, that's going to upset some of the people in charge of those divisions. But I'm sorry, but the facts are there. We're seeing it out on the streets. I can go outside my property and see the problems. Every single one of you can go outside your property and see the problems. And then you can go to your place of work and go outside that property and see the problems there as well. So we all know they exist. Those problems exist. So that brings it back to what I was talking about earlier, core services. That is where our focus should be. Our focus must remain core services for the next 3 years minimum. It could take 6 years. That may or may not be me, depends on the voters. I hope it's me. I'd love to do it for you. But that has to be the focus. The focus needs to be making sure that Auckland City works for you, works for business. If you make it a good place to live and work, where everything at the core is working properly, the rest of it will work out fine. You cannot. Now, I used this analogy in a press release the other week. That'll be a press release that the mainstream media don't pick up on. Maybe I've got to swear a lot and abuse minorities and do some stupid controversial things for the headlines, but sorry, my integrity level is up a bit high for that. In case you missed what I mentioned a week or so ago, imagine council as a race car. And that race car has a championship driver, which is you. You are the driver. But that car needs a crew, which is the Auckland Council, local boards, staff members, the mayor. But the mayor really is sort of like team management. And then you've got other people running different parts of the race team. Okay, so you've got that now. But the car doesn't really go properly, does it? It doesn't function the way it should because all these different divisions, sorry, just texts coming through, my apologies. All these different divisions are not working together, are they? They're not in sync. Now, if you've got a division, let's split it down into 4 divisions, shall we? 5, 6. Let's pick on 6. So we have 4 divisions, 1 for each corner of the car, the wheels, and we have 1 for the engine and 1 for the aerodynamics. Okay, so we've got 6 divisions. Now, none of them talk to each other, and none of them really research what they should be doing properly, and they just randomly do stuff. So we end up with wheels of different sizes and types and engines not really designed to run one or the other. And someone says, oh, hang on, that should be a shaft drive. Well, why have you bought a chain for that? And hang on, there's no gearbox. Where's the gearbox? Why isn't the gearbox? Oh, hang on. You got to pay extra for the gearbox. That wasn't in the original tender. Well, why didn't anyone work that out? Well, what was the pricing on it? I didn't see it. Who signed off on it? You get what I'm saying here? Now, If you don't get that right, how do you expect to win races or win a championship? You can't, can you? You got to get the base right. You got to get the core function of the car, the actual car itself working right, so that you can use it to achieve what you want to achieve. So we have to get the core of Auckland City working right, and the machine itself is Auckland Council, the race car is Auckland Council, for you to be able to achieve your goal. Now, the other rant I've done multiple times is Auckland Transport because, well, they've got issues, them and the other CCOs. But if you're trying to slow down traffic on purpose to get people out of cars by causing congestion, all you have done is strangle Auckland City. What you have done is basically throttled back the engine on the race car. You've put a hose clip onto the fuel line. It needs 20 litres. We'll just use silly numbers so you can all understand it rather than race talk. You need 20 litres a second, right? It's been cut off and shrunk down so you only get 2 litres per second. Now that's because they just want that. But what's that done? All it's done is choke and cause problems, and now you can definitely not achieve what you should be achieving. So there's all these little things that need to be solved around the place, all these little problems, and you and I know, I've been bombarded with people's issues for 4 years now, because I started this in 2018 for this year, really. 2019 was the stepping stone, the baby steps, but it was all a plan for 2022. And I can tell you, the messages and emails I've got of everyone's issues over that 4 years, I've struggled to keep up with. Astronomical. But we've got to get them sorted. We've got to get all the corners of the car working together. We've got to get the engine department talking to the people who are putting the wheels on. And then those aerodynamic people, we could say they are cycleway people. They're not talking to the rest of it. I was shown what's been happening on K Road after the cycleways have been put in. What an absolute disaster. Now, the reason that has happened is because the left hand hasn't been talking to the right hand. People are making decisions that are plain and stupid. They are so inept and dumb. And we could keep exploring words to use for the problem, but it's there. So we've got to solve all those issues. Now, that's a lot, and I can't do that by myself, but we get the team going, every single department. Now, Auckland Council's a monster. We all know that. It is a monster, and it needs slaying. But as I've said earlier, you cannot go in there with the big wielding the big sword, expecting to cut it at the throat and chop off its head and stand there rah, 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 and think you're going to have success. That's not how it's going to work. We have to get everyone around the table and everyone inside all the departments of Auckland Council understanding our goal together. So core services is the focus for me. It's not about all the beautification. It's not about stupid things like light rail, which won't happen anyway. Not at 660 million per kilometre. It's not happening. It's never going to work. A spade won't touch the ground on that. But we've got to make sure that we don't, as a council, do stupid things with our money. Sometimes some things are going to slip through the cracks, like possibly that bus stop on Great Barrier Island. But now what needs to happen is you've got to go to the department in Auckland Transport and say, hang on, that's not your money, man. That's the ratepayers' money you've just stupidly spent there, and get them to understand how bad of a decision that was so it doesn't happen again. That is, to me, what leadership should be all about. Now, again, every division in Auckland Council has their own management, middle management, probably sub-management, probably a sub-management, then a sectional sub-management, because otherwise why would we be paying $1 billion a year in wages soon? And they're going to get upset when someone like me walks in and asks how they do their job and let's fix it, because they think nothing's wrong. But here's the thing, even though the mayor doesn't have powers within those divisions, there is influence of office. That is what should the office be used for. That is what the position should be used for. Not palm pressing, not walking around hoity-toity being a puppet to the government. It should be going into that department, that division, and sitting down and saying, guys, girls, can I do that now, or do we have to be... No, I'm going to. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we need to solve what went wrong here so it doesn't happen again. It could be the roading. We need to work out why a section of road in some obscure part of Auckland has been tar sealed 3 times in 5 years and really badly, and why it keeps getting done. We need to find out why. Someone has to be willing to dig into the dirt of it rather than being on the outside and requesting legoimas, LGOIMAs, the Information Act, local government. You can sit there and request those all day long. And even internally, you still got to do some of that stuff to get, but there's an influence, an ability that the Mayor's office has to be able to get in there and find those problems for you. It's the ultimate mechanic. It really is. Now, how do you solve the problems? Again, there's so many answers to that because it depends on the problem. There's different ways of management, different ways of fault finding, different ways, and you just can't go through them all. We've all been in, it doesn't matter if it's family issues or work issues. There's issues you've got to solve through and go through and work out how to fix it all, okay? That is what I want to do. That is what I'm offering you, because core services, your money, return on investment. No climate tax. No climate tax. Okay, just no, with a big N and a big O. No climate tax. I would love to remove the fuel levy, the fuel tax. I think it's unnecessary. That's just not a stroke of a pen. There's work to be done there, but that's what I stand for. I also want to have a full audit of every targeted rate around the super city, every single one of them, and actually properly sit down and analyze it and work out if it is a return on investment or not. That's what I want to do. I'm willing to do it. It's a roll the sleeves up, get down and dirty, suffer some punches, live with the stonewalling, come home stressed kind of job. But at the stage of my life, I want to do it because I'm exactly like you. I'm frustrated, I'm angry, and I want to get to the bottom of the problems and see what I can do to find some solutions. And at the end of the day, I don't have aspirations to be an MP. I'm not in this to use as a stepping stone for central politics. And I'm certainly not using it to brush my ego. And it's definitely not a retirement plan because I'm too young for that. So, and like I said back in 2019, and I've been saying all along, those who get voted in fact, all of us here on this planet, we are just temporary custodians. We have no right to be doing some of the things that we're doing to our environment. But look, that's another podcast talking about that kind of stuff, because we're getting all that tree culling thing wrong. And I'll get into that on another one. But we are temporary custodians. And even the position of mayor is temporary. You're not in it unless you're Shadbolt. I don't know if that's just because he's really, really been good, or there's just been a serious lack of options. You're not in it forever. You're a temporary custodian. So for the tenure, voted in October, I've got 3 years to bust my ass for you. Can handle that. It's 3 years of hard work. So what? It's no big deal. It's not like I've got to think, oh, geez, I've got to do that for 20 years. No. It's a short tenure. And then if I do my job right, I'll say, look, I'll carry on. I'll put my hand up and I'll carry on doing it because I think we've solved some problems here. We've come up with some solutions. We're going really well. Let's go for another election and see if you want me back. That's how I'm taking this process. Because again, I really want to get to the bottom of all the problems so that we can have our core services back, not our frills. Necessities over niceties. I think I've done and said what I wanted to say on our money, and what I want to achieve for now, because it's vast, isn't it? I mean, you could talk for 2 hours on it. And probably next time, in fact, I haven't done a Q&A with you for a while, so I might do my next week, I might do a Q&A with you. So you can actually ask me some questions. And then I can be more specific on some answers if I have them straight away. That's probably what I'll do. Okay. So again, me, core services, it's your money. Let's get it spent properly. Return on investment. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Yeah, I'll probably stir more across the next. Yeah, I probably will. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Craig Lord podcast. There'll be more to come because we are ramping up now, aren't we, towards October. I'll let you know what's happening over the next few months because, things are going to progress steadily now. We've got to convince mainstream media that I'm actually worth putting in the paper this time, in the press. Yeah, something like that. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for watching.
We all have questions. Let's try to find some answers. It's the Craig Lord Podcast.
Oh, bye. I mean to say, goodbye. I forgot.